Hey you guys, welcome to book review number 72, I believe. Today I will be reviewing Culture Shock, A Guide to Customs and Etiquette Taiwan by Chris and Ling-li Bates. I don't know if you can quite see that little sunset behind me. Well anyway, this book right here is about, it's not a narrative book or travel book like many of my other reviews, nor is it a history book, but actually sort of, as it mentions in the title, a guide to culture and etiquette. What does this entail? Well, it gives a little bit about sort of the broader aspects of Taiwan. Obviously it's an island. It's synonymous with the semi-recognized state of the Republic of China, which is opposed to the People's Republic of China or the Communist state. Chiang Kai-shek was the leader of the nationalists, which controlled the mainland of China from, I believe, 1931 maybe, the end of the warlord period, up until 1951 when the Chinese communists took over. But that's not what really this is about, the mainland of China. This is about Taiwan. So once the communists took over, basically the only place for the nationalists to retreat was to the island of Taiwan. Now Taiwan is a semi-tropical, it sits right on the Tropic of Cancer, highly mountainous, relatively small. I think it's about the size of maybe Massachusetts. Highly economically developed country, whose population, I believe, is about 22 million, and whose majority of people live along the western alluvial or coastal plains. Taiwan also has a number of mountains, especially for a country of its size, having mountains higher than any in Taiwan or any in even Japan, or pretty much non-Himalayan East Asia. I believe it's over 13,000 feet, but don't quote me on that. Let's see, what else? That's kind of the introduction to the start. But the book focuses much more on like individualistic things, like how family plays in Taiwan versus particularly the West or the United States. How your expectations of your parents oftentimes outweigh your own personal desires for yourself. Now that is to say it doesn't happen in the West, but I think we would generally view that as a negative or a lack of goodness in the West. Let's see, what else? Well, we got the language. The language is standard Mandarin, with actually some concessions to the native Hakka people, who were the indigenous people of Taiwan, if you will. Now, Taiwan has had Chinese, specifically Han Chinese, from about the 15th century, I believe. But obviously the biggest influx was in 1951, when the rest of China fell to the communists, and everyone associated with the nationalist government, or just people that generally opposed Mao Zedong, moved to Taiwan to start their lives anew. Let's see, you got the weight of tradition, I talked about that. Language, settling in. Let's see, what did it actually say in that chapter? Well, most of Taiwanese live in apartments. It's not huge like housing blocks like we have in the United States, primarily due to land. And of course that has to do, dealing with that, you're dealing with Chinese real estate people. Now if you think people in the housing lords, landlords, apartment people, this is kind of close, hold out like this. If you think those are bad in the United States, believe me, the ones in Taiwan and in China, I guess, as a whole, though communism is supposed to empower the landless peasants, which it hasn't, or the indebted peasants, which it hasn't. But anyway, in Taiwan, the landlord's bad. And why are they bad? Well, that goes to another Chinese tradition, in that outside of some very basic kind of like don't kill your neighbor, assault, any sort of bodily harm, there isn't a general sense in the society that you should do unto others as they should do unto you. Not to say that people act greedily all the time, but as, say, for example, in a much more benign case, like a landlord, say, promising you rent at one rate and then raising the rent the next month, well, don't be surprised. Get it in writing, make sure your landlord knows, and I think it said this in the book, appeal to the correct authorities, some sort of landlord management association in Taiwan, if things go bad. Let's see, we got the cuisine, much because Taiwan is sort of an imported culture, at least Chinese Taiwan. Hakka Taiwan people are sort of like the Indians or the Native Americans, if you want to use the politically correct term, in the United States. In that they form a very tiny percent of the population and really have very little political power. So, you know, it's not like South Africa, if you will, though whites often controlled large chunks of South Africa's history. I would say nowadays that the settler community is not in power, is in the minority. That's very much not the case in Taiwan. Matter of fact, up until very recently, really, Hakka tradition was not really even recognized. Taiwan was just felt as a sort of one of the many provinces of China, and the only thing that separated it from the mainland after 1951 was the difference in government. Let's see, what else do we have in here? I guess, you know, there's the military aspect of Taiwan. Now, it's not like North Korea by any means, but just because of the imminent presence of China, much like the imminence of North Korea to South Korea, the military is more present than what you would say in the United States. Now, I know the United States has a huge military, but they're often confined to military bases, and who's attacking the United States? Also, I mean, in Western Europe, you know, in Eastern Europe, you might feel the military a little more, but in Western Europe, you know, who's attacking France? We're gonna get Russia to attack France. That's not gonna happen. But there's a significant outside chance that China could, you know, get militarily involved with Taiwan. So, more recently, the society has become democratic, but basically from 1951 until the mid-1980s, it really wasn't a democracy. Matter of fact, it was sort of an autocracy which focused on individual liberty and focused on capitalism as the means for people to better themselves or choose their way in life. But politically, people really didn't have much of a choice, being that the KMT, or the Chiang Kai-shek's political party was in power. Chiang Kai-shek wasn't always the leader, but the party that he founded. Let's see. Relating to your Taiwanese friends, well, gift giving and face are very important in Chinese society. Particularly face. Gift giving is sort of like, you give to me, I give to you. And you never want to be equal, because that would sort of like end the relationship, but you never want to be behind in the gift giving either. So it's kind of just a constant one-upsmanship of doing nice things for one another, gift giving. Now, that being said, we're not talking about large things, and often if somebody is not your friend, or somebody that, I shouldn't say not friend, but somebody that you wouldn't feel embarrassed to lose face to, i.e. a stranger, i.e. a lot of times a Westerner when they first move there, because you won't know too many Chinese people within the country. You won't be involved in this gift giving, but once you get to know people better, you'll realize it's a very sort of gift giving kind of culture. at least among close associates and friends. And often that translates even into the business world. Now, Taiwan is known as being less corrupt than Hong Kong, but there is known to be, you know, like payoffs and you scratch my back, I scratch your back kind of stuff in Taiwan. But on a more smaller scale level, hopefully you guys can see me when I go into this forest. On a smaller scale level, actually I'm not going to, giving face is really the key to social interaction in Chinese society and by extension in Taiwan, in that it's not that you never want to be embarrassed, but you, yeah, I mean, I guess to a degree you can say you never want to be embarrassed, as petty as that sounds. Get a good picture here. Particularly to your parents, to your boss. There's very strict rules about behavior, etiquette. Most of them fairly similar to behavior and etiquette in the West, but there's not that sense of camaraderie with your boss. And families are very loving, but there's a very sort of strict social hierarchy in the family. To your coworkers, even ones that don't necessarily have a formal higher position than you do, a lot of times there will be sort of an informal ranking that you should get to know about, a lot of times depending on seniority or something like that, on who is more important in the relationship. Now that doesn't mean you got to be a hard ass to people below you or a kiss ass to people above you, but you just have to act within, you know, the social constraints of knowing where you are in society. Obviously, like I said, it translates a lot to the family. Paying respects to elders is a huge thing in Chinese society, as most of you probably know. Let's see, what else we got here? Enjoying Taiwan, a couple just little facts, the little places that I like to mention. There is the National Museum. So when Chiang Kai-shek left left mainland China in 1951, he basically more or less evacuated, Chinese would say stole, the nationalists, or Chiang Kai-shek would say saved, the huge treasure trove that had been gathered through centuries and centuries and centuries in Beijing, and through a roundabout way eventually got those into Taiwan, and now creates one of the premier museums in the entire world within Taipei. Taipei is also much known for its street markets. I think it's the Xinyi, that could be completely wrong, but it's one of the world famous night markets. You got to go there for the egg and oyster, I believe, omelets, which I know that doesn't sound good, but it's totally delicious. Let's see, what else? That kind of gets back into the cuisine. As I mentioned, the cuisine comes from all over Taiwan, just because it's such a cosmopolitan, at least in the larger Chinese sense, place. So you'll find Szechuan restaurants, you know, Manchurian restaurants, you'll find Shanghai restaurants, you know, Fujian and Guangdong, Cantonese I should say, style restaurants. They're really just all over. Let's see, what else is there? Bunch of mountain hiking. You know, it's very strange in that Taiwan is a hugely urban society, but because there's the eastern half of the country is so mountainous, it's not that they wouldn't want to grow their population there, but it's just impossible to grow population in the eastern part of the country because it's just so mountainous. I think I saw once that the population density in eastern Taiwan is less than any other area of China outside of Tibet, the Uyghur Autonomous Region, and Qinghai. Which, you know anything about China, that's a large region, and maybe like Inner Mongolia or something, but that's a large region, and of people living, and none of that region has less of a population density per capita than the eastern Taiwan. But western Taiwan is more dense than, or is as dense as Shanghai. In large areas is as dense as Hong Kong. You know, in large areas is as dense as Shenzhen. Very, very dense. So there's mountain climbing, outdoor activities, river rafting. There's the famous Tokoro, I believe that's how you pronounce it, gorge. What else? Yeah, at the very beginning I sort of mentioned how it's become industrialized. This is largely due to the Japanese influence. Post 1945, so from 1905 to 1945, Japan or Taiwan, even though it was more historically, to a degree, a Chinese province, it was ruled in Japan during that time period. Let's see what else we got. The meaning of life. I've gone way too much into the history and not enough into the sort of personal stuff. Yeah, just be good to your friends, screw everybody else. This kind of shows up in the street traffic. You need to watch out for that. Now, since this book has been published, there's been a subway that's gone on and or been built in Taipei, but all over Taiwan, it's basically just sort of mob mentality on the streets. I mean, not actual mobs, but in terms of driving, it's who can ever get to an individual spot first. People are sometimes known to drive up on sidewalks to get around a car that's in their way. So you just have to watch out for that. Let's see, nationalized healthcare, they have that. Staying healthy, handling emergencies, got that. Let's see, cultural quiz. I'm going to end with the cultural quiz. Let's see if I can get to it. Because that would be a good way to end this. Okay. So you have read the book, but you were ready to try out blah, blah, blah. Knowledge. I got to go to the next page to find out what this cultural quiz is all about. So these are true, false questions. Oh, this is perfect. I'm going to do all 30 of these. True, false. Taiwan is part of China. True. Because Taiwan is a tropical island, the weather is great all year round. I would say true and false. The weather is okay, yeah. It's really, really hot in the summertime, but because there are mountains, you can go up in the mountains and get some relief from that. Yalishan, that's a famous mountain resort. But also it doesn't get real cold. You know, I particularly hate the cold. And if you're in Taiwan, it'll get cool in the wintertime because it's not like in the middle of the tropics, it's on the northern edge of the tropics. But it almost never freezes, a lot of fog. So yeah, kind of bad weather, but not like, it's not Chicago and it's not Los Angeles. Somewhere in between. I guess you could say. You can wait to get your visa at the airport when you arrive in Taiwan. That's not true. Get your visa ahead of time for sure, especially people that are going there to teach English. Because of the traffic problems in Taipei, it is advisable only to ride the wild chicken taxis, as these get you to your destination quicker. I would say no. I actually don't remember reading about that, but anything that says wild chicken taxis, and I know the traffic is really terrible in Taiwan, don't do that. Many exports, oh jeez, let's see. Many experts in Taipei settle in the area around Tianmu and Yangjingshan, which I believe is in the east near sort of a beach community. I think that is true. ICRT is a local English language radio station that is very helpful to foreigners. No idea about that. Real estate in Taiwan only gets a commission from you, so they are on your side during the negotiation. I don't think that that's true. I think they'll try to lowball you, but I'm not 100% sure. I know Chinese business, like I said, will occasionally screw you. Bargaining is still an acceptable practice in many stores. I would say that's going out of persuasion, but particularly in like markets, bargaining is more acceptable. I would say you could bargain more in the West, but it's becoming, or you can bargain more than in the West. You can bargain in Taiwan, but it's becoming more westernized, so you just gotta kind of watch out. A jin is a unit of weight. Don't know, because Taiwan exports so many clothes to the West. Fashions of all sizes are readily available. No, I am 6'10", do not go there if you're 6'10". Because, let's see, in Taiwan, driving is a nightmare, but parking is a dream. I would say that's true, not quite sure. I'm only going to do 15 of these, even though there's a lot of them. It's easy to get along speaking English in Taiwan. No, but you can do it. I would learn basic phrases. And, you know, if you learn basic phrases and then kind of fill in the gaps through just kind of, not hand gestures, but kind of intuition, non-language intuition, I think you can get along. It's possible for foreigners to learn to speak Chinese. That's absolutely true. Learning popular songs is a good way of improving your spoken Chinese. That is true. A person's chop. Ooh, this is interesting. A chop is a piece of wood that you press on a piece of paper, much like a stamp, like a push stamp, rather than your signature, and is actually much more recognized than a signature is in Taiwan. So a person's chop is just a relic of the past, which is used for signing letters the traditional way. No, get a chop. They're cheap. It doesn't necessarily have to say your name on it. You just have to have it kind of something that's individual enough that you can say, oh, that's mine, like the style on the stamp. Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism have the most profound philosophical effect on the everyday life of Taiwan. I would say that's true. It's a big jumbaloo mixture. Because Taiwan was a colony of Japan, the Taiwanese are very similar culturally to the Japanese. I would say they're closer to the Japanese than the Chinese are, but they're even closer to the Chinese than the Japanese are to China, if that makes sense. So they're closer to China, but they have influences from Japan. The Taiwanese have nothing but respect for foreigners, whom they see as shrewd negotiators. No. They often see you as barbarian. They won't think you as stupid, but, well, I guess they will think of you as stupid, but it's not really, I don't know, I guess it's a little bit racist on their part. But yeah, you won't be seen as real smart, but then again, you probably won't speak the language fluently when you go there to begin with. Let's see, face is still very important in relation to, absolutely you need face. Chinese culture is shame-based. I would say that that's kind of false. I mean, basically it's like losing face, but it's certainly a strong aspect of the society. I wouldn't say it's shame-based, but I would say it's very, very strong. I don't know about that one. When gift giving to the Taiwanese, it's the thought that counts rather than the type, size, or brand name. No, make sure you spend an appropriate amount. Now, if you constantly one-up one another in price, you know, that's not good, but they look at labels. They're becoming westernized. Taiwanese appreciate if you express concern for their health and offer medical advice. Absolutely true. They're very, very concerned about everyday remedies, you know, much like your grandmother was, if you're a Westerner, to everyday ills and stuff like that. Okay, this is getting on 25 minutes, so I am going to close this out because it's getting too long. But this is a really good book. Cultural Shock, A Guide to Customs and Etiquette, Taiwan, subtitle, Chris and Ling-li Bates. If you're just looking for a crash, let's see if we can get this in the picture, a crash course in basic what to do when you're lost on planet Taiwan, when you're on a place that looks like no other place on Earth, particularly if you're a Westerner, read this book. It won't solve all your problems, but it'll help, believe me. All right, see you guys later. Bye.